What's up, Wizards? It's Dev and Digby here, Mtg, and we are rounding the corner on these Kaldheim spoilers. There's not a whole lot of the set left, and spoilers wrap up on Tuesday. That's tomorrow if you're watching this when it probably gets uploaded. But for right now, we're going to talk about some of the weekend spoilers. It was kind of slim pickings this weekend, and there wasn't a whole lot of amazing stuff, but the good stuff we saw was really good, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about everybody's favorite meme from the weekend first. There's Colossal Plow, just 2 mana for a 6/3 vehicle. And whenever it attacks, you add 3 white mana and gain 3 life. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end, and it crews for 6, which is a lot. Unless, of course, you got Babe the Big Blue Ox over here, 2 mana 0/6, that can specifically use its toughness to cruise. So you can play the Plow on turn 2, and then hilarious, right? Seems pretty obvious, but you use the Ox on turn 3 to crew the Plow, because in case you're rusty on your vehicle's rules, creatures can in fact tap to crew the turn they come out. Now, this is not a great combo, but I will say that swinging with a 6 power thing on turn 3 and getting extra mana and getting 3 life seems okay, but you have to play some really bad cards in your deck to make this actually work. But I'm not going to stop you from having fun and making like Mr. Plow jokes and stuff. Seems like a good party to me, so you have at it. But I'm going to move on to Arnie Brokenbrow, and man, we've gotten some names in this set, haven't we? We got a Herald, and now we got an Arnie. Just like a bunch of like your uncles in this 3 mana 2 and a red for a 3/3 legendary human berserker with haste, and it has boast 1. You may change Arnie Brokenbrow's base power to 1 plus the greatest power among other creatures you control until end of turn. So not too bad if you got like an Anax lying around that's got a relatively high power or something. It just costs 1 mana. It's not really too much to ask. Plus the creature has decent stats on its own. A 3 mana 3/3 haste with no downside is at least a decent body, but you know, I gotta wonder if the mono red decks that are already in the format are a little bit too low in on the curve to include another 3-drop, and is this better than other options they could play? I mean, they have to play Anax, obviously, but is this better than like the Phoenix that they hardly ever play and is a really good card? That deck is just really low on available slots right now, so I'm not sure how much they want to fit this card in, but it does seem pretty decent. We also saw Fearless Pup. I only bring this up because it's not a dog. It's I think they really dropped the ball on that. I can see why you would want to make it a wolf, but it is not a dog, and it should have been a dog. It's just a 1 mana 1/1 with first strike, and you can boast it for 3 mana to give it +2/+0. So it's not a very good card at all, but it should have been a dog. I think we can all agree. But the last common that I want to look at from the previous couple of days is actually the most recent card that we've seen spoiled so far, at least, at time of recording. And that's Skull Raid. This is 4 mana, 3 and a black for a sorcery. Target opponent discards 2 cards. If fewer than 2 cards were discarded this way, you draw cards equal to the difference. You can foretell this for 1 and a black. I like this way more than I should like it, but it's kind of interesting. It only costs 1 more than like a Mind Rot. So, I'm not going to, Mind Rot's not a very good card in Standard, obviously, but I do like that if you draw this in the late game, or if your opponent has already regurgitated their whole hand onto the board in like an aggro deck, you draw this on turn 4 or something, then it's draw 2, you know, it's not bad at all. And against like control decks and stuff, then you can at least, the Mind Rot mode is still active, and the Mind Rot mode might only cost you 2 mana at the time that you cast it. So I think this is actually like kind of good, although probably not good enough to see any real play. But I think discard effects should use this more often, right? Like if your opponent can't discard a card, instead you draw the cards. I think that this card should set a precedent for discard moving forward. We should do this more often. I like it. Now, there were a couple of uncommons from the last few days that were at least worth mentioning. We got to see another one of these uncommon legends, Zvala Ice Shaper. This is 3 mana, 1, a red, and a green for a 2/4 legendary snow troll warrior. That's a lot of types to keep track of. You can pay 3 and tap it to create a colorless snow artifact token named Icy Manolith with tap to add a mana of any color. You can also pay 6, a red, a green, and tap it. And look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may cast a spell from among them without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So once you have enough mana to cast an Ugin, you basically get any card from the top 4 of your library with no restrictions whatsoever at instant speed, which is, that's really good. And in the meantime, if you don't want to attack or block with this or whatever, or you can block with it and then an instant speed EOT or something, make a ramp make a rock, which is actually kind of good. If you can draw the game out long enough, then something like this might actually be a really cool way to end the game. But all in all, I'm just not too sure that this is anywhere near as fast as it needs to be for any format, Commander included. But, of course, if you're doing some rampant in Standard, I could see including, like, one copy of this in your deck, because if you've got nothing else going on, you don't have the Genesis Ultimatum or the Ugin in your hand or whatever, but you got one of these on board, then maybe you got a chance to spin into something glorious. So it seems like a lot of fun to try it out, but I'm not really sure it's going to be worth the slot in competitive Magic, but I do want to try it out. I've been looking at a sort of Gruul control deck for the last couple of months that I think actually gets way better with this new set for a couple of reasons. We'll discuss it once the season starts, but I think this could be a key piece in that deck because you're just trying to draw the game out, and something like this is really good in specifically that situation. But all things considered, I'm pretty sure this isn't destined for too much, premier play. But the last uncommon from the weekend is actually probably one of the best cards from the weekend, period, and that's Emmersturm Skullcairn. This is a land that ETBs tap and taps for a black, or you can pay 1 a black and 2 red, tap it and sack it, to have it deal 3 damage to target player. If that player discards a card, you can only activate this as a sorcery. So normally, I don't like these lands you can only activate as a sorcery. I think that really puts a damper on how good they can be. But this one, I really, really, really like, right? It doesn't affect the board state at all. I should say that up front. If there's one bad thing about this, is that you're paying all this mana and getting rid of a land to not affect the board state. And this late in the game, that might not be what you want to be doing. But this late in the game, that might be exactly what you want to be doing. I mean, there is some opportunity cost here. You don't want your lands to enter the battlefield tap. That is a real downside, but in the late game, in like the Rakdos aggro decks or even the Rakdos Kroxa decks, you're just effectively getting kind of both sides of the Kroxa enter the battlefield trigger, right? 3 damage to the player, to the dome, and a discarded card. And that's not bad later on in the game, right? Especially if you drew dead, you got nothing else to do, or you're, just out of cards in your hand, you have extra mana. This is a great way to use that mana, especially if you are against a control deck or rogues or something with cards in their hand. This is great, but of course, if you're playing aggro, this might just end the game. A couple of copies of this in your deck, and in the late game, dealing 3 or 6 damage. A huge deal in terms of that late game reach to actually close. So often aggro decks will get in, just 1, 2, 3 life within 1 or 2 or 3 life of winning a game, and then just get shut down. The control deck will turn the corner, or they'll land their Ugin or whatever. And this is just an uncounterable way of closing the game, and I really, really like the implications for Rakdos decks. So even though it doesn't affect the board state or anything, I still think this is easily one of the stronger of this cycle. But moving on to the rares from the weekend, we saw Cosmos Elixir first. This is a 4-mana artifact. At the beginning of your end step, draw a card if your life total is greater than your starting life total. Otherwise, you gain 2 life. I really want to like this. If for some reason it reminds me of an old school MTG artifact that would have been a really awesome artifact back in the day. Right? I feel like somehow this could have been printed between Antiquities and Ice Age somewhere, and it would have been a chase rare in the set. But as it is now in modern day Magic, this doesn't look very good. I do like that the ability procs during your end step and not your upkeep, so this is liable to draw you a card the turn it enters the battlefield, but it is a little expensive, especially in the mono-white life gain decks, in the black-white life gain decks and standard that you might think want to run a card like this. 4 mana is a bit much, and I guess it could draw you a card the turn it ETBs, but even then, sometimes it's really gonna, especially, this comes into play on turn 4, so, if you didn't get the perfect start, this is probably not gonna draw you a card on turn 4, it's just gonna gain you a couple of life, and you've spent 4 mana to, really in no way affect the board state, probably for multiple turns, so the card doesn't actually look very impressive by today's standards, but I do think it's a cool Magic card, and again, for some reason it reminds me of old school Magic, so I kind of like it. But keeping it pushing with some of the lesser rares from the other day, let's look at the Blood Sky Massacre. This is 3 mana, 1 a black and a red for a saga. On Chapter 1, you create a 2/3 red Demon Berserker creature token with Menace. On Chapter 2, whenever a Berserker attacks his turn, you draw a card and lose 1 life. And on Chapter 3, you add a red mana for each Berserker you control. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. And I say that we're still in the lesser rares, but this doesn't look too terrible. It is one of those sagas that creates a creature the turn it ETBs, and then kind of relies on that creature to carry it through its other chapters, which are always kind of trappy looking to me, at least, because if your opponent has any kind of removal for the creature it creates, then you might not even really get the other chapters on a saga like this. So I'm always a little bit wary, but I will say that if you have other berserkers to support this, it suddenly gets very good, because if you keep the token out and you have one other berserker, well, on turn 4, you're going to draw 2 cards when you attack. Seems okay, right? At least in Christmas Land, where you're guaranteed a profitable attack that turn. And then in Chapter 3, you might be able to add, 2 or even 3 extra red mana to your pool. And who knows what you're going to spend that on, right? Maybe an Embercleave or something. So this doesn't look horrible in the best case scenario. And even the floor is just sort of okay, right? It's a 3 mana, 2/3 menace that gets destroyed by removal. And that's kind of it. But they might still have to deal with other chapters on the saga, depending on what else you played in the game. So I could see this being an important card for the Berserker deck. The problem is, I just don't really see the Berserker deck being particularly good. So moving on to Tyrite Sanctum. This is a land that taps for a colorless, or you can pay 2 and tap it to have target legendary creature become a god in addition to its other types, and you put a +1/+1 counter on it as well. Or you can pay 4, tap it, and sack it to put an indestructible counter on target god. A lot of utility on this land. If you just have one legendary dude laying around, suddenly it kind of becomes like an animal sanctuary for legendaries. That's kind of okay, I guess. If you got extra mana laying around. This is a decent sink, makes your dude bigger every turn. It's not bad. And then, I guess if your opponent does have a Shadow the Sky or some kind of sweeper effect or something, being able to pump a lot of mana, 5 total mana effectively, into making that thing indestructible might win you the game, but I don't like the implication of having to leave all your mana open just to protect your one legend. But I mean, if it wins you the game, it wins you the game, right? So it doesn't look too shabby. I will say, in a world full of important exile effects like Elspeth Conquers Death and on down the line, a card like this looks a little bit less effective. And again, that is a very steep cost to make your dude indestructible. But there are going to be some games where all you do is break Wars of Attrition by making your guy a little bit bigger every turn, and that'll be okay. Altogether, I like the utility and the versatility of this land, but I'm not really sure it's destined to see a ton of standard play. That said, it's probably going to be in every commander deck forever, so there's that. But I'll move on to Graven Lore, which kind of impresses me. This is 5 mana, 3 and 2 blue for a snow instant. Scry X, where X is the amount of snow spent to cast this spell. Then draw 3 cards. That's an awful lot, but we've seen cards like this in the past that didn't really end up making too much of a splash, and we've seen them in the last 2 standard environments. So I'm not saying this is a great card or anything, but it is instant speed, draw 3 cards. Even if you don't scry at all, instant speed 5 mana, draw 3 is at least okay. Right now we have Into the Story, which is 4 mana to draw 4 cards. This is just way better in most situations. But if there's a snow-based control deck, and there are some pieces for it right now, but if there's a snow-based control deck, then this almost certainly finds its way in as a 1 or 2 of, because this kind of refill, especially with possibly a Scry 5, seems pretty insane if you have the mana to spend on it. At instant speed, you certainly do in a control deck, so I could actually see this seeing some sparing play here and there. But there were a couple of cards from over the weekend that I really, really liked, like the Raven's Warning. This is 3 mana, 1 a blue and a white for a saga. On Chapter 1, you create a 1/1 blue bird creature token with flying, and you gain 2 life. That was nice of them to throw that in. On Chapter 2, whenever 1 or more creatures you control with flying deal combat damage to a player this turn, look at that player's hand and draw a card. And on Chapter 3, you may put a card you own from outside the game on top of your library. So, in case you thought that you were going to be done with these wish effects after Fae of Wishes rotates in October or September, something like that, then here's a card that's a wish effect that's going to be in standard for a good long time yet, and I really, really like wish effects. Now, there are some problems with this one. First of all, in terms of the wish effect, it puts the thing on top of your library, in which case you have to wait an entire turn to draw it, unless you have a way to draw it. So you better have a way to draw it laying around on the table, whether it's a Planeswalker or a Maze Mind Tome or something, Jack. You need access to the card on top of your library, else you you might lose it, especially in a format full of rogues. So do keep that in mind. I don't love that about the Wish, but I do love that it's a wish that pops off on turn 5, which is a good time to get a wish and have all of your mana open to you, which is something you can't say about Fae of Wishes. You have to pay 4 mana at sorcery speed to cast Granted. And in that case, you often can't cast the thing that you wished for. But with this card, you're going to have all your mana open to you. So boom, you can cast like a 5-drop. If you played this on curve. If you played it off curve, and suddenly there's a whole wealth of opportunities open to you. And you can cast that Kiora Best the Sea God, the turn that this goes off if you cast it a little bit later in the game. So not too bad. This does fall into the trap, though, that I was just describing, of creating a creature on the turn that you play it that it then kind of relies on for the next chapter. And there's going to be a lot of times you don't get the next chapter on this card, so it's kind of a feel bad. But just the fact that it's a 3-mana wish effect that also creates a creature, it looks like a decent enough card to me, right? Your opponent has to take out the 1/1, or maybe you just use the 1/1 to block and extend the game a little bit until this grabs a sweeper for you on turn 5 that you can use to reset the board state. In the meantime, it got you a blocker. So cards like this, really, really impressive looking to me. Of course, there's a lot that goes into this card. You have to have a good wish board. You have to have a way to draw the card that you wish for 9 times out of 10. And sometimes you want to play other flying creatures if you want to actually turn the second chapter into gold. But I don't even know that you have to make this a decent saga. We've seen sagas like that recently. Elspeth Conquers Death has kind of a lame second chapter, although it always tends to do work against me. We can all agree that the second chapter on ECD is kind of the weakest one, but it's still such a powerful saga on its first 2 chapters that it's worth playing in 9 out of 10 decks with access to double white. So I think this is a very similar card that control decks are probably going to want to play, especially the tap-out control decks. So I really like this card in case you didn't know by the way I'm talking about it. But my favorite card of the weekend is maybe a little bit of a sleeper for the set, honestly, and that's Emmersturm Predator. This is 4 mana, 2 a black and a red, for a 3/3 vampire dragon. Check out this creature types with flying. And when it becomes tapped, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard and put a +1/+1 counter on Predator. And you can sacrifice another creature to have Predator gain indestructible until end of turn, and you tap it. This is a really cool card, at least to my mind. It's no Wicked Wolf, and I'm not even sure why I'm comparing it to Wicked Wolf. But, I guess they're both 4 mana. You can both, sacrifice something to make them indestructible, and when you do that, you tap them. So for some reason, they're close in my mind, but they're really not. What this is, though, is a creature that can just become indestructible, which is really, really valuable, especially in terms of a finisher, right, or just something you can keep on the board through sweepers and spot removal. It's just, I like creatures that go indestructible, right? Like right now, Seasoned Hallowblade is one of my favorite creatures in the format, and this also kind of reminds me of that, only it has built-in flying and stuff. In terms of actually getting in for damage, you can make the argument it's better than Hallowblade, but it does cost a little bit too much mana. I'll say that much. Sacrificing a creature isn't necessarily the easiest thing in the world, although I think Rakdos deck could make that fairly easy, especially with cards like Claim the Firstborn and, the Akroan War in the format right now. It's probably real easy to just steal something, sack it, make this bigger, It seems like it has the potential to be a really gross card, but when you do compare it to other 4-drops like Wicked Wolf and Rankle, I'm not sure it necessarily has what it takes to really be a playable standard card, but I do have my eyes on it, because a creature that can grow and go indestructible whenever you want it to is always a valuable asset. I've actually got more to say about this. Note that it's kind of a scavenging ooze, sort of, and it can snipe cards out of your opponent's graveyard, which is going to be really important some of the time, but it can also just eat the thing that you sacrifice to it. You sacrifice a creature, that thing goes to the graveyard, it gets indestructible and taps, and then its first ability triggers. Right? So, because it tapped. So you just eat the thing that you just sacrifice and it gets bigger. So a lot of cool play lines with this card. And again, not really ready to just say this thing is trash based on casting cost alone. Because again, grows throughout the game, snipes cards from graveyards, an incredibly important thing to be able to do right now, and can just go indestructible virtually at will, and has a bunch of tricks like stealing your opponent's stuff and sacrificing it. So I'm just telling you, look out for this. I think it's actually one of the bigger sleepers in this entire set. But that is it for Kaldheim weekend spoilers. Like I said, there's only a couple more days until we've got this whole set figured out, and we know finally what a freaking rune is. I can't wait for that. There's really not much of this thing left, but make sure you stick with the channel, like the video, subscribe, do all that stuff, because we've got top 10 lists coming up, all the best sleepers in the set. Predator will probably be on there, but we've also got like the top 20 or 25 cards to do. I've got deck techs to do and stuff, so sub to the channel. All the best content's really coming up very soon. So do all that. Of course, you can check out the... I guess I'll do the Twitch shout out first. That's what we'll do, Ziggy. I have to figure out the self-promotion thing. You want to see me play Magic or perhaps even other video games, go to twitch.tv/SBMTGDev, link in the description. Or, same thing, link in the description. You can check out the Patreon, $1 a month, and you can vote on what decks we do first in Kaldheim Standard. And you need to get on that if you're going to do it, because first polls of the season are going to be up in just a week or two. So make sure you get on that. If you've got the money to spend, I really appreciate it. It helps out a lot. But for now, just let me know how you felt about all the weekend cards down there in the comments section, and we will just, well, we'll finish up spoiler season in just a couple of days. I'm excited. I'm really excited to get in the lab with some of this stuff. But for now, I'm going to edit this video, put it on YouTube, and go back to speedrunning Hades. I'm going to do that. I've gotten down into the 11s in terms of clear times. I'm like 11 minutes and 50 seconds right now, which makes me like 241st in the world. But the speedrun world record for Hades right now is like 5 minutes and 55 seconds. So all I got to do is cut my time in half, and I am in, baby. So I just got to do a little bit more work on that. I'll get there. But anyway, I love you guys, and I'll catch you cats later. I'm Deb from the place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love and be kind.